Hey everyone, didn't plan on making another video so soon, or episode, but I had noticed that Sam Seder of the Majority Report went on Jubilee and had taken part in one of their weird political gangbangs, to put it irreverently. What Jubilee will do is they'll take one person who holds a certain position, put them in the center of a ring of people who hold the opposite view, then all those people will kind of vie for their chance to challenge the person in the center. And so if you're not aware, Sam Seder is a left-leaning guy. I would consider myself pretty much simpatico with his political beliefs. I believe he started out as a stand-up comedian and a sitcom actor, and he segued into broadcasting. He worked for Air America, or he had his show on Air America. Not sure if it was the Majority Report at that point. Maybe it was. And he's been doing the Majority Report both as a podcast and a YouTube show for years and years now. And do I sound more mellow than usual? I'm trying to kind of chill, relax, take my NPR voice for a spin, hoping that maybe, my voice doesn't sound as strained and grating as usual. But anyway, the Majority Report was one of the very first podcasts I had ever downloaded. I think along with TYT, The Joe Rogan Experience, Adam Carolla, David Pakman, and Skeptoid with Brian Dunning. But the theme or premise of Sam's Jubilee appearance is that it would be him versus 20 MAGA or Trump supporter types. Most of them pretty young. They looked maybe college-aged. There was one middle-aged looking woman, but she never got a chance to talk, so I don't know if that counts. But the subject of religion came up a couple of times, so I thought I'd respond. So first up, we have this young, really kind of hardcore Christian fundamentalist type guy.
On the religious fundamentalist aspect, Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really theocrats, is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't.
But morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference. So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay. And as someone who's watched probably too many atheist versus theist debates, I knew right away we were dealing with someone who was basically regurgitating spoon-fed Christian apologist talking points. In this case, the idea that, without God or religion, what do you base your morality on? You have no real moral foundation, and it all boils down to a matter of preference, as the person said. And this argument is one of my personal pet peeves. There's some alliteration. Can't stand it, really gets under my skin. And I have a couple of counter arguments against it. Not strategically, it's just what I actually believe. I liked Sam's response that he comes at it from a humanist perspective. And I agree, I feel the same way, but if we dig even deeper, I think, as I've said ad nauseum on the show over the years, I think our moral sense is probably a product of evolution to some extent. We're an evolved social species, hardwired it would seem, with both a capacity for tribalism and violence, as well as for things like altruism, group solidarity or cooperation, empathy, compassion, that whole in-group, out-group dynamic. And you can see this at work, for instance, with our closest animal cousins, the chimpanzee. Chimpanzees can be unspeakably, horrifically violent. They will chase down a lone chimp from a rival troop and beat and savage it till it's dead, basically biting and ripping apart its extremities. They'll soar through the branches and catch monkeys and eat them alive. And on the other hand, they're very social animals that groom and comfort each other and have their own societies. So I think it's pretty much the same with us. And the trick is trying to decrease or minimize those negative or brutish aspects and enhance and nurture those more, metaphorically speaking, better angels of our being. The positive traits like altruism, empathy, compassion, etc. So I don't think we have to turn to religion to figure out where morality comes from. And my second argument would be, okay, let's say worst case scenario, there's no God, no higher power that is the author of morality. We're kind of on our own, teetering over an abyss, left to come up with our own rules, etc. Well, tough luck. It is what it is. You know what I mean? It's like, am I supposed to adopt a worldview that's chock full of superstitious beliefs that my reason tells me are most likely false, just so we can have some kind of moral framework, which I don't think, as I just stated, is necessary anyway. I don't think we need religion to explain morality. But on to the next clip.
So you're like a consequentialist? Utilitarian?
I don't really bother myself with being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to a preference. So if you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society.
Okay.
We have laws that we have decided as a society in a democratic way. And for some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean, it would be
morally right under your
not
view.
Morally right. No. I'm not talking about morals.
Okay,
here.
so here's where I'm getting to, right? Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off of.
I believe you can have an ethical framework without religion.
And if we take...
So I thought that was well said by Sam at the end, that he believes you can have an ethical framework without religion. The only point at which I thought the kid might have knocked Sam back on his heels a little, and in fairness to Sam, this is, a live unscripted event where you have person after person aggressively coming at you, barraging you with questions, etc. Maybe Sam didn't have enough time to reply or kind of, fumbled a bit, was when he started kind of hectoring Sam aggressively about whether or not on his worldview, whether or not it's all right to kill someone would simply be a matter of preference or arbitrary. And then, since Sam seemed to imply that, these are things we get together democratically to decide on as a society, he then tries to turn the tables on Sam and say, oh, well, if as a society we came together tomorrow and decided it would be all right to strip trans people of their rights, that would be okay or moral. When obviously, according to Sam's worldview as a humanist, no, stripping people of their rights or arbitrarily killing people, that's, not kosher, shall we say. And I don't know if I would consider myself a card-carrying humanist, but I do consider myself as having somewhat of a humanist worldview, like Sam. And I don't know if Sam labels himself a humanist either, but he says he also has a kind of humanist worldview. That combined with my belief that morality is somewhat innate, that we've evolved as social creatures, and hopefully I don't sound like a broken record, with both a propensity for tribalism and violence and group cooperation, altruism, etc. And as I also already stated, my belief that we should try to minimize that dark side of our nature and nurture those, once again, metaphorical better angels of our being. And I think that notion we refer to as the Golden Rule, which predates the Bible, that we shouldn't do anything unto someone else that we wouldn't want done unto us. I think that is embodied in kind of what I'm talking about in humanism as well. Yeah, I think in general, and maybe it has something to do with that kind of evolved moral sense and being social creatures, that when you treat other people the way you'd want to be treated, I think things usually go a lot smoother. You feel better about yourself, you know? So, yeah, obviously, according to my worldview, arbitrarily killing people or stripping people of their rights is wrong as well. And I think a lot of it has to do with empathy as well, you know? The kind of difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy is that ability to not just feel sorry for someone, but to imagine yourself in their shoes and what it would be like to suffer whatever they're suffering, and imagine how you wouldn't want to undergo that, and then say, hey, you know, they shouldn't have to go through that either. But I'm rambling. This is completely unscripted, a last-minute episode, so on to the next clip.
The leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates, you have a reproductive dead end, so two men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation where you do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem, I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good. Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society has decided...
Should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults, it's a different thing than...
Okay, so you're okay with a 45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest?
No.
If they consent, you're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's not beneficial.
Right, there's duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides those duties. Life isn't about freedom and exercising what you want.
I mean, life isn't about freedom. That's a hell of a sentence. But, wow, there was a lot there. So he talks about, and this, I get so sick of this, hearing about people, or listening to people rather, fearmonger about how we're going to suffer some kind of cataclysmic population drop and we need to start cranking out more babies, or we're going to run out of human beings, and it's at least in part the fault of gay people. He talks about, you know, two guys together being a genetic dead end, which is true in a sense, I guess, unless they use a surrogate or something. But who cares? I got news for you. Straight people are always gonna massively outnumber gay people. Gay people are still a minority. And we're never gonna run out of straight people who want to get it on and intentionally or unintentionally create offspring. Like most organisms, we're hardwired to want to reproduce, or at least hardwired to want to engage in the act that leads to reproduction. Kind of the biological prime directive. And now we have Elon Musk going on about, well, we know, what's he have? I think he has 14 kids now with different women. He seems to be obsessed with reproduction or procreation and increasing the population size. And I think in parts because he has this obsession with wanting to get to Mars, and he wants to make sure we have a sizable enough population, or we stay alive long enough as a species to make it there. And one thing I learned recently that I hadn't been aware of is that supposedly the big reason why Mars doesn't have a hospitable or inhabitable environment is because it lacks a magnetic field, and that even if you were to terraform it, that environment would just get stripped away again. I don't know, maybe we'll make it to Mars in the sense that we land a couple of astronauts there, which, as I understand it, is still a dangerous endeavor in and of itself. But I don't know if we'll ever successfully terraform or colonize it in a truly desirable way, where we have these beautiful, picturesque, thriving space communities, these places, you know, that you'd actually want to live in. I was listening to a couple of scientists or futurists talking about what it would be like to try to colonize Mars recently, and they were talking about people needing to live underground and constantly being in fear of radiation, etc. So I don't know. I always try to be self-aware and be intellectually honest. I have to admit, a lot of what I'm saying right now is just me expressing my honest beliefs about the plausibility or lack thereof of the scenario. And I think part of it is just me becoming disillusioned with space exploration, which I don't like saying because it's illogical or sounds irrational, because of my growing disdain for Elon Musk. But to get back on track, I know that will offend someone, but anyway. So this Christian fundamentalist guy also states how he believes gay people should be straight and they're just gay because it feels good. And Sam rather sanely and humanely replies, maybe it's just the way they're born. And I'm also of the mindset that I think there's most likely some kind of biological component to both homosexuality and, transgenderism. As I understand it, both gay people and people who are trans seem to know from a very young age that they're different and that this seems to be the way they're kind of wired. And I used to use the example that as a straight dude, I knew from a very, the human sex drive is so powerful. I knew from a very young age that I was attracted to females. I'd feel kind of funny if I noticed the girl sitting across from me kind of make eyes at me. Then I started noticing my female teachers and kind of curvy celebrities on TV. Then I started noticing the girls around me in my class developing. And, I couldn't imagine feeling that, that kind of attraction and going, why not try guys? I couldn't see that in a million years. I think we're wired the way we're wired. And then he also trotted out that old, canard of, oh, well, if we're accepting of gay people because they're born that way, does that mean that we should accept, I'll say, PDF files as well, to use an internet euphemism? And of course not. And Sam tries to explain this, that in one instance, you have two same-sex adults who want to be together. On the other, it's a much different dynamic. You have an adult and a kid. Who knows? Maybe they're born that way, but doesn't mean you can allow them to prey on others. There's a big difference between two people of the same sex deciding to consensually be with each other and someone preying on someone else, even if it is some kind of innate predilection.
Well, you want to impose your religious doctrine on me, and I don't want that.
You just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
What's my argument as to why I don't want
you have no
your
contention.
Religion to... Well, because first of all, I don't think that you have the right to corner what God is telling us is right or wrong. And there are differences between religions. And so my argument is, you're not going to keep halal or kosher, right? I don't believe that someone has a corner on religious truth. And the reason why we have a democracy is because we didn't want a king. And the kings came from the idea that their God said that they're the ones who's supposed to be king. And so we can disagree on this. I don't want to live in a country that is ruled by religious fundamentalism.
And if I do, you have no issue with that.
And no. And this is why I say, under Trump, yes, you have won.
Yes.
You have a
Only
bunch
male
of Christian.
and female. You're right.
You have a Christian nationalist,
which is necessary.
And so
was the kid implying that Christian nationalism is necessary at the end there? We're cooked, as the kids say. We are screwed, man. Is this the youth? What's happening?
I concede the point that under Trump, your Christian nationalism has gained an advantage under this.
Sorry, we're going to have more kids. We're going to have less abortions. We're going to have more family. We're going to have stable family households. Sorry about better education.
People, gay people should be outlawed.
They should be straight. They should be straight.
Women should be secondary to their husbands.
Women should submit to the husbands.
Women
that doesn't mean they are slaves.
Right,
it doesn't mean they are slaves. It means they are protected. Okay, let me ask you then. Let me ask you.
No.
Should women be drafted? Should women be drafted?
Listen, I think
if they're equal, should they be drafted?
I think this is the vision that you have, and I think Trump supports it.
Yes.
I think the Christian nationalists he has throughout his government are all going to work towards your vision.
Yes.
And my hope is that when people look at this, they say, hey, wait a second. I don't want my life to be dictated by the notion of a Christian nationalist prescription. Now, you may win out. I mean, certainly, like if you look at a country like Iran, They have a theocracy there, and apparently that's good for them if they want it.
My final point is whenever.
But I don't want to live in a
My
theocracy.
final point is whenever.
And I think that was both kind of startlingly, is that a word, and refreshingly honest of Sam for him to say there that you may win. You guys, with your Christian nationalist agenda, may actually end up winning. And it's scary. I've had that thought too, but I think he's right. That is one dark possibility. Not dark if you happen to be a Christian nationalist, but if you're someone who cherishes the principle of the separation of church and state and that people shouldn't have one religion forced on them, it's a very dark and dystopian potential future to envision. One which I think we've already seen begin to unfold. I did a whole episode, which next to no one watched, about Project 2025. I was surprised by how little views that, allow me to vent, that got. I had the big Project 2025 sign with a Jesus wearing a MAGA hat on it, and barely no engagement. I don't know. The one place where I might disagree with Sam a little, and to be fair to him, I actually think he probably shares my view, but maybe he was just trying to be snarky or sarcastic. But he was talking about Iran having a theocracy and how, that might be fine for them or whatever. When obviously, not everyone in Iran is happy with their theocratic state. And within, over the past couple of years, we've heard stories about women protesting, being forced to wear hijabs and that kind of thing. I even covered a story about a woman's death who was jailed for, I believe, not wearing a hijab or not wearing one, quote unquote, properly. So I just thought I'd add that.
We see people live out Christian values to its full extent, we see a great society. When we see people deviate from that, that's where all the problems arise.
All right,
I
pause.
think you are at home in the Trump. Trump
Thank you very much.
You've been voted out.
I like Sam simply responding, I think you're at home in the Trump world. And this guy saying, wherever you have Christianity or, a society based on Christianity, you have a great society. I would say, pick up a book on the Middle Ages and read about the witch hunts and the Inquisition, or in relatively more recent history, read about, what went down in Salem, not too far from me in the 17th century. And then I have a couple of quick clips of this young blonde girl who has gone kind of viral because she made some wild statements endorsing, quote unquote, xenophobic nationalism. And at first I thought she was just some random young girl, maybe from like a nearby college or something. But I had found out because I watched an episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored. I know, me and Piers Morgan, right? Right before sitting down to record this. And she was actually a member of the panel. And it turns out she's actually a journalist or a correspondent for Rebel News, which I think, correct me if I'm mistaken, is something associated with Gavin McInnes. Is that it? But yeah, so pretty wild. So I'm just doing some quick fact checking. Yeah, it says Rebel News is a Canadian far-right political and social commentary media website. Lower down, it says that Gavin McInnes, founder of the far-right neo-fascist organization Proud Boys, was a contributor. McInnes departed in 2017, then temporarily rejoined the site for a period in 2019. But I'll play those clips.
Hi.
Sam.
So I actually think that this liberal world order needs to be thrown away completely, and I think Christian nationalism would be a good alternative. What we're seeing right now is just
congratulations.
and thank you. And yeah, I think
So I have to admit, now that I know that she's from a far-right outlet, the stuff she's saying kind of comes across, I think, is more performative and less shocking than how it hit me the first time when I thought she was just some random college girl.
what we're seeing right now is a culture of death. This is the most suicidal generation ever. We have millions of children dying by abortion. People aren't even reproducing. We don't even have like a.
Should we mandate people reproduce?
No, I don't think we need to mandate. We can just stop them from killing their kids. There
So
are like
you want to outlaw abortion?
yes.
Yes, I mean, we have a fundamental disagreement on this, and my claim was that if you voted for Trump, it would be to your benefit if you want to outlaw
I think it would
abortion.
benefit. I think it would benefit everyone.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that that women should have the right to choose.
I'll kind of agree with her on one thing. I think we do have, this horrible mental health epidemic we're dealing with. And we do, I believe, have an increase in suicides, especially among young people. And I think a lot of that has to do with like social isolation, financial hardships. It's getting harder and harder for people to get ahead, to be able to afford a home, etc. And with really young people, adolescents, kids in their early teens, I think there's the added factor of social media. And for young girls, specifically, there's the pressure to try to live up to these unrealistic beauty standards, constantly seeing all these influencers and models using filters, etc. And if real world bullying wasn't bad enough, now kids have to deal with cyberbullying as well. And there's been a number of stories in the news over the last few years, disturbing stories of young kids taking their own lives. But I don't necessarily think Christian nationalism is the answer. And she also brings up abortion as a part of this culture of death, as she perceives it. And my thoughts on abortion, I think it's inherently a negative thing. I mean, you're terminating a developing life. But I also believe, as Sam does, in a woman's right to choose. And we should keep in mind that most abortions take place very early on into gestation or pregnancy. I think it's 90-something% of abortions take place during the first trimester. And after the repealing of Roe versus Wade, we started to see all these draconian abortion laws put into place. And I've covered what kind of horrible stories you end up hearing about, where you have women who actually wanted to have a baby, but something goes wrong. They have an ectopic pregnancy, a miscarriage, and you have doctors who are so afraid of getting into legal trouble for performing an abortion that they deny or delay treatment. And you end up with women going septic because they have a dead fetus inside them, and just awful stuff. I think every decent and sane person could probably agree the fewer abortions, the better. But I don't think the way to achieve that is by enacting these harsh abortion bans or by trying to outlaw abortion. I think you do that by trying to educate people when they're young about the seriousness of getting pregnant before they're ready, of having sex before they're ready, of having unprotected sex. And I know for, hyper-religious people, there's a lot of them that are even against contraception. I think contraception's a good thing, including things like the morning after pill, which, as I understand it, isn't even deleting, quote-unquote, a fertilized egg. I think it primarily prevents ovulation, doesn't it? So it's not even technically an abortion pill. Even if it were, I wouldn't care. If you were aborting a freshly fertilized egg, I wouldn't lose sleep over that. That's a lot different to me than aborting something that has a nervous system and fingers and toes. But we've even seen, legislation trying to target things like the morning after pill, which is pretty scary.
I think that it would benefit everyone to bring back the family unit, to stop having women just thrown into the workforce.
Maybe we shouldn't allow women to choose to divorce unless their husbands say it's okay.
I mean, I don't really believe in divorce in general, so, sure.
All right. I mean, this I think, though, reinforces my point that if you are
but it would be better for society. It would be better for everybody in society.
I know she said family unit, but it almost sounded like she said bring back the family eunuch. Yeah, and I think this is the part that went viral.
And same with xenophobic what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
Xenophobic nationalism is better?
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation.
After that, she goes on to kind of specify that she believes, as you could probably guess, it should be white, Christian, European culture that's dominant. I do agree with her in a sense that I think it is good when someone comes to a country or, immigrates to attempt to assimilate to that country's quote unquote dominant, for lack of a better word, culture. I believe in immigration. It would be hypocritical of me not to. I'm predominantly of Italian and Irish ancestry, two groups that were kind of looked at as lesser or the other when they first immigrated here being the US. But I believe we should have sensible rules and regulations concerning immigration, and that every sovereign country or nation should be able to decide how much immigration they want to allow and at what rate, etc. And by assimilating to the dominant culture, I don't mean stripping away everything that makes you you or casting off your old culture. One of the things I love about the US is that we're a melting pot with all the different faiths and traditions. I just mean respecting the laws and social norms of the country you've come to. And as someone who has a fascination with and respect for Native American culture, I think it's always good to remember there were people here before us, and we're all immigrants in that sense. That reminds me, recently I started getting into watching different Native American dances on YouTube, but I guess that's a story for another day. This, once again, was kind of an impromptu episode. I'll skip the shameless plugging, and as always, thank you everyone for watching/listening or listening/watching, and until next time.